everybody. Welcome back to the show. Hope you're having a great day. If you're like me, you probably saw the whole story with an author you might be familiar with, Mr. King, has kind of blown up all over the media about him not actually being indigenous. They did a genealogy largely at his own request because of a bunch of rumors that had become persistent. So it turns out that he has no indigenous ancestry in his family tree and is indeed not Cherokee. What struck me about this story, if you're not familiar as an adoptee, is the question continually about what it means to be indigenous. Now, of all the stories I saw, I thought the one on the Globe and Mail was well done. Of course, it's largely written by Mr. King himself. And so you can take that for what it's worth as far as his defense of his position. I thought there were some good words he had to say, unlike a lot of people who have been found out to not be indigenous. For him personally, at 80 some years old, this wasn't something he willingly, I think, entered into as to be fraudulent. It's not like he decided one day he was going to take space and money and jobs in indigenous communities because he saw an opportunity to do so. I think a lot of these individuals like him who grew up in a time and a place of different kinds of racisms that are not as prevalent today. Being indigenous and faking indigenous identity has really never been an easy thing. It always has come with racism and discrimination. So on his part, even though he's not indigenous, has largely believed himself to be so. In his self-confessed letter in the Globe and Mail, he even goes on to state that this is a gutting thing for him and his self-awareness of who he is as an individual. So it's interesting conversation. I think in 2025, when we have these people being found out who have had long-standing notoriety and somewhat you could call success in the indigenous community, to be found out to have no indigenous ancestry at all, even though in his case, that was his lived experience. So what does it mean to be indigenous? Can you only claim to be indigenous if you are genetically linked? I think this is an interesting conversation that has a wider implication that in time and place, if colonialism didn't exist to the degree that it does, and it wasn't continually interfering in the day-to-day lives of indigenous people and communities, what might that be to be indigenous? In times past, you look at people who rejected modern civilization, like Grey Owl, who did perpetuate a fraud. He came from England, gave up civilization, as it were, rejected the modernity of society to embrace an indigenous lifestyle as a superior mode of living. So was he a fraud? Sure. Did he perpetuate fraud? Yes, he did. But he saw the value in a way of living and an identity that didn't exist where he came from. You have people who have been adopted by indigenous communities, grown up with an indigenous experience and an indigenous life, who, by genetic standards, aren't indigenous. Where is their place in the conversation? I'd like to hear your comments. What do you think? Where do you fall? What does it mean to be indigenous in 2025? Is there an indigenous perspective? What is that versus the colonial perspective? That's my two stakes, and 2 cents on the topic. I'd like to hear what you have to say. If you like the show, please hit the like and subscribe. As always, we're on Spotify, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And if you find the value in the show, please consider supporting us with the Buy a Coffee program. And until next time, the jig is up. The Jig is Up is made possible in part by the Métis Federation of Canada, uniting Métis people from coast to coast to coast.